In this special episode of Catholic Education Matters, Kate Fogarty, Executive Director of Catholic Education Sandhurst, is joined by Tom Sexton, Executive Director of the Diocese of Ballarat Catholic Education, to discuss the recent enterprise bargaining wage offer from the Victorian Catholic Education Authority and Catholic school employers. Drawing on their front row view, Kate and Tom reflect on taking an unprecedented step of putting a best offer directly to employees, the realities of cost of living pressures, and why unity and portability across Catholic employers still matter. It's a candid, good faith conversation about leadership under pressure, communicating through noise, and keeping students, staff, and mission at the centre of decision making. Now join us as we explore what truly matters in education.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Catholic Education Matters. It's Kate Fogarty here, Executive Director of Catholic Education Sandhurst Limited. And today, special guest, I've got Tom Sexton from the Diocese of Ballarat. And Tom is the Executive Director of JobSal, the equivalent to CSL in Ballarat. And Tom, it's great to have you with us today.
Thanks, Kate. Great to be with you too.
So a little bit different to the conversation we had with Ed a month or two ago, that this one, the thing that's front of mind for Tom and myself, and I think for many of us across Victoria in Catholic education, is the enterprise bargaining process that we've all just been through. So term 4, everybody came back day 1 and was thrown into something very different that, we hadn't experienced before in Catholic education. Tom and I, sitting in the chairs that we do, thought it just might be interesting to people to hear a little bit about what this has been like for us and how the process has unfolded and what that's felt like, and some of the things that have been pleasing for us in that process and some of the things that have been challenging about it. So I guess we'll go back to even before the start of term 4, because while it was a bit of a surprise to schools when we hit the ground running right on the first day of term 1 with an offer directly to staff. In fact, the work had been going on for quite some time, firstly to prepare the log for Catholic education, which is a normal process, but also there was a degree of concern amongst the executive directors that we couldn't get the union to the table, that no discussion was taking place. Tom, you've been through this a few more times. This is my first time in this process. How did that all feel for you at that point in time?
Well, I'd probably go back a step because I've been through this more than once as the Executive Director in Ballarat and obviously in other careers, if you like, in Sandhurst as well as Principal. One of the things that I didn't want to repeat from last time was how long it took. And I think, there was certainly fault from employer and union in the last EBA. And we really wanted to do something different and try not to spend months and months and months or even a year or more negotiating a new EBA. And we also were very cognizant of the fact that we've got this problem with cost of living, and that was really at the forefront of our thinking this time around. We were ready since July. We've kept asking the union, do you want to come to the table and bargain? They didn't want to do that, so that forced our hand to a certain extent. Otherwise, we would have been just in the normal old process of waiting for months and months and months for this to unfold, and that doesn't do anyone much good. We thought there'd be a different way of going about it. Let's try putting our offer directly to our staff and see what they think. So that's kind of a bit of the background about why we went about it that way.
I must admit, as someone I've been in principalship for 15 years, so I'd been through 3, I think, agreements over that time, and then coming onto this side and just seeing how things operate from here and being involved in those discussions, I was just really surprised that the union can kind of just balk at entering into discussions. I've been a union member all my life and I believe in unions. I think they're really important, but to have the organisation just say, no, we're not going to bargain unless it's on these terms and not even come to the table. I mean, the first rule is you show up. For me, it was interesting and I guess just personally disappointing that not even coming to the table, not showing up for a meeting down the road. That was fascinating to me. So to learn along with you guys, you people who are all so much more experienced in this space, that was unusual, was fascinating from my perspective too. So when the proposition came, maybe we just have to go straight to employees, particularly given cost of living crisis, we want to get things moving. It seemed like a really reasonable approach to me given all the other doors had been closed.
That's right. That's rule number 1. You've got to turn up. And every time we asked them to turn up, they said no. So very frustrating. And we know that normally what happens is that we follow the AEU and the Department of Ed in their negotiations. We know that there's going to be a state election later next year. So, it wouldn't take Einstein to work out that the AEU will want to wedge the government on that as close as they can to the election to get the best outcome they can. That does mean, though, that our staff will have to wait until the end of that period of time, which is likely to be sometime in November or even beyond that, before they'll see a pay rise. And that's why we thought, well, let's get in front of it. Let's offer a $1,500 bonus, the 7% pay rise, and if by some chance the government does better than that, then we'll match it anyway. The money's in people's pockets. We just thought that was well worth putting up to our people and asking what they thought. And for us, in Sandhurst and Ballarat, our people thought that was a good idea, and we got a majority yes vote.
We did really feel for our people around that. But I guess, the other part of that was that the offer that we put on the table didn't come out of nowhere. Like, it really had come from all that consultation. And that was interesting to me too, seeing the degree of consultation that happens with principals and other leaders in schools to build that, here's what we're going in as what we want to see happen for our staff and for our schools, knowing the parameters of, parity with the government on wages, that's always going to be a lock and a given, and then trying to find ways that we can look at the other pressure points for teachers, for allied staff, for leaders in schools, and just really think about what's going to make the biggest difference, because you're never going to get everything into every agreement. I love that in the union log is always everything. And we see that every single time, every time we go into this process, it's this huge wish list, which, maybe if all the dice always fell every way you want, you'd be able to put together, but maybe not in the real world.
Well, that's right. And I was interested to read at one stage, I'm not sure whether it was in the IAU website or it was on their Facebook page, but someone was claiming that we get $7 billion in recurrent funding every year. And certainly if we got $7 billion in funding every year, we could do many of those things. But they made a slight rounding error of about $4 billion. So the money that we get in, about 80% of it, as we know, goes on staffing. So if you're having substantial staffing wages or changes to conditions that cost money, you've got to be able to find the money from somewhere. And one of the frustrating bits for me was some of the commentary about New South Wales teachers, and if New South Wales employers can do it, why can't we? Well, New South Wales teachers don't have TIL. They don't have 30 and 8. They have extras. The big pay rise, the big percentage pay rise that went to New South Wales went to their teachers only, and everybody else got a lesser wage rise, whereas what we're offering is 7% for everybody that's covered by the EBA. No distinction between a teacher and an LSO or somebody else.
Yeah, we'll talk some more about some of those really particular things that were raised around the offer in a little bit, but even that sense of how much money's in the system to pay for these things, and some of the commentary around, the Catholic Church is really rich and the schools are really rich and the VCA's got lots of money. I think, it's some reality into those conversations. Firstly, any money that the Catholic Church might have in no way flows to schools. We're completely separate entities, and so we should be. But I think also I'm not sure that the local parishes are as rich as some people think they might be. That was really human. I think some of the priests were like, oh my God, if you think I've got money to throw around for these things, that's another ball game. But also, as you say, the money coming into VCA, 80% of that's tied up in staffing costs anyway. That's what that is. But I also think, people forget that schools need to build up reserves, and groups like us need to build up reserves for things like the upgrade to the gym or the new science labs because they're 30 years out of date, or the primary school that doesn't have a decent playground. Or we've got one school in our diocese, Rochester, that we can't insure anymore because of the flooding in that area. So if that school goes under, all of that money's got to come from us, and little Rochester Primary School's not sitting on a whole lot of money to rebuild itself. So I think, there's some reality into that and some reminders about what it is to be part of a system and what solidarity means. It does mean money gets held in particular places so that when those things happen, we actually can ensure Catholic education continues in the communities where it needs to. A bushfire comes through. Not all of that's going to come back to us in some amazing government funding. We're going to have to find money somewhere to rebuild those buildings. So that's why there is resources sitting there, but it's all earmarked. It's all ready to be used, should the worst happen.
Yeah, and we've had certainly those forces of nature have happened. Different things have happened in our diocese, and one of our little schools out at Casterton, it got hammered by a massive hailstorm that did a lot of damage right across the town. But we basically had to rebuild that school, and that money's not just sitting around in someone's back pocket. You've got to actually make provision for that. So yeah, it's important to be prudent, and it's good stewardship to make sure that we're looking after the resources and being able to have enough flexibility to cope with the unexpected natural disasters.
I wish we were sitting on a gold mine and able to pay for all these wonderful things for our fabulous staff. But unfortunately, there is going to need to be give and take and what's going to make it into an agreement and what's not. To say nothing of the fact that we have all agreed over a long period of time to parity with the government sector. And that is really important to Catholic education from a solidarity perspective. Government education to be strong, and we respect our government educated peers. Catholic Ed's not here to set itself above and beyond the government sector. That's not who we are. That's not what's expected of us. From a religious point of view, from our deep Catholic tradition, we do have solidarity with our government peers in this space.
Absolutely, yeah. It's in everybody's best interest to have great school systems, whether they're government, Catholic or independent.
So the offer went out on the first day of this term, and that was fun. We launched to the principals first because we did think that was really important, that they heard what was being sent to all of the staff, and then it went out to all of the staff in an email, I think within about 10 minutes of us starting that meeting. So it was pretty quick. And then we went into a couple of weeks of really just trying to explain and to help people to understand exactly what the offer was and why it was different to what had gone beforehand. So what was your reflections on that first week, Tom, or those couple of weeks we were in that explaining phase?
It was busy, that's for a start. So, we were busy getting around and talking to people and doing video conferences and so on, and little short videos and so on to explain things. This is really new ground. It's never been done before in Victoria and really anywhere else in Australia. So most people expect the first offer to be, an ambit claim, and then, you negotiate from there. So being really clear that we'd put together what we thought was our very best offer, and it's still a tremendous offer in my opinion. I think it's great. And then trying to explain to people that this is different than normal negotiations. This is a best offer. Trying to be really clear about what we were offering and what would happen if we were successful and what would happen if we were not. And then as time goes on, we had to get into a bit of myth busting as well. So there was a very strong campaign against this idea, which, that's fine. That's people have their own opinion and thoughts about whether this is good or not. But obviously, the majority of people in our diocese thought it was a good idea. We spent a lot of time talking to people and answering questions and being open to listen for feedback and so on. But it was a busy time. It was interesting in the fact that it hadn't been done before, and a lot of people needed some explanation around that. And then the whole business around an SIA and whether if you could vote yes, could you vote for an SIA as well, or et cetera, that sort of muddied the waters at times. It was interesting. It was a very interesting time, and it still is. As we know, we were hoping that the vote was going to go our way, and it did for our diocese, and it did, interestingly, for all the primary schools across Victoria. We also got a majority yes vote as well. So there's a lot of people thought this was a really good idea.
That's one for me that's been really curious in this. And I guess one that's kind of caused me the most reflection is primary school staff across the state clearly were in favour. To me, it's gone to that point of, not every MEA is going to have something in it for everybody or as much in it for everybody. And primary schools went for this because of what it said about till, what it said about wages, what it said about the real experience of them in their schools. For secondary school staff, in this instance, I think for a lot of them, it felt like there wasn't as much in there. It was disappointing to me because I really feel like there is a solidarity element here. Secondaries generally do finish up earlier at the end of the year. Their till is better accounted for. Their camp stuff's sort of already been sorted out, those sorts of things. This one really was a win for the primaries. And, next time around, maybe it swings back to the secondaries. But that for me was, a disappointing that there wasn't a recognition from some of the staff across all of our systems that, you don't win everything, but hey, we're getting 7%, getting in the first year, we're getting 1,500 sign-on bonus. This is really good. It's good for our primary school colleagues. I can get on board with this, but I get it. But I guess for me, we didn't cut through with that message. And I think that whole thing, this goes to the SIA matter as well too, of solidarity across the system, that it actually really matters that Sandhurst, Ballarat, Melbourne, Sale, and the RIMPJPs, that our staff can move across all those employers with the exact same conditions. And that's really important to us because it's been important in the past and because we know it does matter to people. And, people might have forgotten that in the moment, that if we end up in a single interest and we end up with a whole lot of different versions of this, that's actually going to make it hard for some schools to staff themselves because there will be different conditions in different places.
I think that's one of the frustrations for me is that the union says we want one agreement for everybody. Well, all the employers are in agreement and splitting them off into an SIA is not going to be helpful. What happens if Dobsell, our staff say, no, we don't want an SIA, that they don't get the majority vote for that? Where does that leave Dobsell and, maybe some other employers? And then there's another group that are in this SIA. Right now, before all of this happened, we were all together. And now as we sit here today, there's some that are being dragged into the SIA with the union and there are others that are standing outside it. And what happens if some of us stay outside of it? Because it's not what our staff want.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year, and unfortunately we haven't avoided what we hoped, what we set out to avoid, which was for our schools that they wouldn't be interrupted by all of this. We know it was 3 weeks of very intense, lots of emails, lots of information, all of that sort of thing from both us and from the union. That's going to continue now, unfortunately, for everybody because we do have a position on the SIA across the employers, and it really is stemming from that solidarity piece. And I must admit, it did amuse me when the union really got up and about around Catholic social teaching and rights of the employer to strike, which is one of the features of an SIA is those protected, unprotected actions. But I guess, any of us who've done any Catholic social teaching, even if you've taught it to year 9, or year 7, you know that you can't hold one of those principles in contrast to the other principles. You can't hold one above the other. The common good, solidarity, making sure that our resources are equitably distributed, sustainability of the system, all of those things have to be held in balance and tension. And you can't rise worker rights above those others and you can't rise those others above. At some point you have to make a decision about the big good for everybody. And I think that's really, we didn't get that out there enough and people were really attracted to this is Catholic social teaching. Well, yeah, it's one element of Catholic social teaching. It's one thing, not the whole package. And the whole package is hard to hold in balance. And it's an adult, tricky, nuanced approach to hold it in balance. And we just didn't get that out there well enough to people and took one element and raised it above the others.
Yeah, I know, I agree with you. And, perhaps that's one of our learnings. It's something we could have done better at the time, but we were certainly doing our best. And, you're right, social Catholic teaching, they're all integral. You can't just solo one off. So I agree.
Were there others of those things that were said? We did a bit of myth busting there. Were there any that were your favourites that you thought, oh, my God, I can't believe people have fallen for that?
The one that annoyed me the most was, I think we were described at one stage as faceless back office people who don't know what's going on in schools. And that I found really offensive, to tell you the truth. As a former primary school teacher, a former primary school principal, an assistant director in Sandhurst, an executive director in Ballarat, where I go and visit every single one of my schools at least once a year, where my board members, at least one board member visits every school across the diocese as well. So to be rolling out that line that we're faceless back office people, that really got up my nose, Kate. And look, and I know so many others like yourself who have come up through the ranks of teaching and so on, that to describe us like that I was very upset by that.
There is none of the employers are people who haven't been integrally involved in schools for the very vast majority, if not all of their career, and then the board members as well. And the other one that really annoyed me, because I taught in RIMPJP schools and was principal in a couple of them as well, is, to characterise those amazing brothers and nuns and, good folk who worked with them over many years as these faceless men behind the scenes. I agree. That was, did feel pretty yuck to be described in that way. And I know most people on the ground took that for what it was and know When we say the employers are in the room talking about this, it's us. It's literally us. And the VCEA, again, people who've worked in schools, and who've been involved in our systems for a long time, who care deeply about schools and Catholic ed and how we operate. It was a cheap shot, we'll take it on the chin, but yeah, that one, not nice to be called that. A lot of the social media, I think, was pretty aggressive at times. I've not been on the other end of some of that before in quite that way. And I think that was interesting. And to see some, for one thing, the union and some of the shots they made across the bow, but also people just buying in the comments. I actually stopped looking at it all because I thought I just couldn't believe people in Catholic ed were writing things like that and thinking that or portraying the whole thing as some, evil empire out to get them. It's a good learning experience, isn't it? That, the untruths and that vitriolic sort of stuff that happens online, all sorts of people can get pulled into it.
It's interesting because we purposely tried our very best to be positive the whole way through. And sometimes I really wanted to throw my fist at the screen and say, you can't say that. That's just not right.
We had a couple of those conversations, didn't we? Like, if I could, I'd say this. But we did. We tried that with the Michelle Obama. When they go low, we go high. We gave it a go. And unfortunately, that other side cut through. That voice cut through. But that's, that's the way it goes. So cookie crumbles. And we gave it our best shot. I tell you, the one that really annoyed me that got under my nose was it's the 37%. It's, if we could afford to give everyone 37%, of course we'd do it. Everybody agrees. In the same way everybody wanted the nurses to get 35% and would be happy with the police. Of course we want that. But that's a third of the budget. That's more than a third of the budget. We had a joke. Well, it was a bit of a joke at one point. Well, that's fine. We could do 37%, but we'd need to put every fourth person off. It's a little bit what is different about New South Wales is that, staffing is tighter in those schools because of the way they structure up the pay. There's much more strident needs around staffing and allied staff in schools and positions of leadership and all those things. So things we take for granted that we can afford in our system, we wouldn't be able to afford if we had 37% or anywhere near it. And realistically, the government, there's no way it's going to get up around that. Everybody, even the union themselves have admitted that. They came back to our 7% and $1,500 offer, wanted it back on the table, so they knew.
I share your frustration on that, and I like my stats and so on. So I was looking back through the union newspaper, the Point. I analysed the last 18 EBAs that they've publicly put out in that newspaper, and the median over this year for those 18. So the median is 3.3% pay rise per year. That's not 5%, it's not 7%, it's not 17%. Their own work that they've been doing is 3.3%, and they're coming up with 17% for the first year. I don't know.
I can see why people were attracted to that, and I'm sure you can too. Like, if you like a simple narrative, they put it out there. We couldn't cut through with the reality. I think the big compelling one for me is if the police got 20% in theirs and the nurses got 28%, and everybody agreed coming out of COVID, those nurses deserved every single cent of that, and our police do a tough job. It was ingenuous, really, to say that it would be anything other than that. But there you go. They've got to be aspirational. They want members. I know that. I've been part of that excitement and all the rest in the past when the ambit log of claims has gone out. Even again, looking at the ambit log of claims when I was in principal world and even as a teacher, we used to love looking at that list and going, oh my God, it'd be absolute utopia if we all had this list. We'll get somewhere in there between. It's just going to be a long time until we get there, unfortunately.
It certainly looks like it. And I feel really sorry for those, if we go back to the start of all of this, if we go back to those people who are actually suffering from this crisis with cost of living, and they've got to now wait for, well, look, we're in November now. They possibly are waiting until this time next year to see any increase in their pay. I feel really sorry for them, and that's one of the key drivers for us was let's see if we can actually get the money in the pockets of our workers as soon as we can. And
you would have got some of these too, but we got some heartbreaking emails back, and I know VCEA took a lot from that final email that said, sorry, unfortunately, just people saying, that's really going to hurt my family. I was really counting on it and hoping for it. And that was allied and teaching staff as well. So that's the thing, isn't it? There is a great sadness across our people in Sandhurst and in JobSal, and that's a yucky thing to have to deal with and know that got close. And unfortunately, now we've got to wait.
That's right, yes. So it's a frustrating end for us. But we did our best, and we gave people their voice, and they voted. And we did say what would happen if we had a no vote across the state. So here we are in that situation, and we'll wait and see what plays out next. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a great pity, in my opinion, that we couldn't have gotten over the line. It would have been fantastic for all of our staff. And now the ball's in the union court. Can they get up an EBA that's got all the conditions that we were offering? So yeah, the ball's back in their court now, and see what they can do.
Yeah, we'll see. I thought it was interesting last week they sent the letter to the VCA inviting to a meeting, and then without even giving 24 hours, I think, for us to be able to reply and VCA to write back. They've got to receive the letter, get on to all of us who are the employers, check that we're okay with the position, and then write back. So it takes, 30, how many employers all up? Like there's quite
34,
a few.
I think.
Yeah, quite a few only have one school. So you got to get on to all them plus the 4 dioceses. So they did that. And in the meantime, the union had a video they made out the front of the VCA, put a nice little stunt out there. I thought that was a bit rich, but
yeah, they write to us at 4 o'clock and turn up at 10 o'clock the next day.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
Thought it was pretty juvenile. We're really trying to break that. We're really trying to do something different. Why do we have to be so adversarial? Why do we have to have such extreme claims? Why can't we just be reasonable at times and come together for what's good for all of our staff? So it's a bit frustrating. We're just heading down the same old track, same old ER strategies, and it's tired. And I think people get frustrated with it.
I think they do, particularly in a profession. We expect a professional outfit to be acting professionally on our behalf. And anyway, that's for another time. No, we're coming up to the end of the year, Tom. That was big, and everyone gave it their best shot. The principals did an awesome job, really getting the information out there. We're really proud of them and their leadership teams and the
Absolutely.
work that they did, helping to myth bust and to clarify. I think that was really cool. Have you got something exciting coming up for the end of the year in your schools? What are some of the things you're looking forward to in the last 4 or 5 weeks?
Well, I suppose I'm not sure everybody's looking forward to this piece, but everybody will start their report writing now, Kate. So that's something that we all have done. I've done it and you've done it. And there'll be a whole range of staff getting into that now. Obviously, we've got the excitement of our VCE students through exams and so on. So hopefully that's all going well for them and that they can finish off their 13 years of education well. In these last few weeks. There's always a great time at the end of the year, reflecting on the year, but also looking forward to Christmas and celebrating, that Christmas story and the real reason why we're all here and why Catholic schools exist. So there's that message of hope that we've always got, and we'll keep doing our best for the people that we're serving. And as you say, the principals and staff have been doing a tremendous job all throughout the year, and I'm very grateful for that. And when we do get to it, I hope everybody has a really restful holiday because they all deserve it. And just reflect back on the year that it's been and the whole purpose of Catholic education, why we're here, and what we can do to keep helping one another deliver on God's promise of hope for all of the kids that we have in our care.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tom. We always ask at the end of these podcasts what matters most from what we've talked about. I feel like that beautiful summary you just gave really goes to that. But is there anything else you're thinking about what matters about, this process we've just been through, and what's sitting with you in that space as we kind of wind up our discussion?
Well, I think we've broken the mould in the sense that we've gone out to our employers this time to just hear really what they're interested in. And I think that sits in beautifully with some of the Catholic social teachings, if we want to get back to that, in that everybody has a voice. Sometimes the voice gets narrowed down when there's only a small representative group talking on behalf of others. So we've certainly got such an interesting time at the moment with, across the state, we've got 45% who thought it was a good idea. That's not far off 50-50. So it's not a majority union view or a majority employer view. There's a lot of people out there that could go either way. So I think the fact that we genuinely wanted to listen to our people is a really good signal. Yep. So we might just remember that the next time, the next EBA, that perhaps there is a different way of going about it, and that we can genuinely talk to our staff and do something more in a more cooperative way with the union and the employers rather than being so adversarial.
Yeah, we can be hopeful. Nice. A nice Christmas message there, Tom. Thank you. Thanks for your time today and that discussion. I know you and I have in a few more meetings before the end of the year around a range of different topics. There's some school funding ones, a bit of other bits and pieces going on in the lead up to Christmas that we'll see each other. But it's been great to be able to have this chat and to just reflect, as humans, like as we're just ordinary people too, what it's been like for us. And I know many of you would have stories as well, as two dioceses that obviously got the yes vote. We share the frustration of our people that we now fall into process around this. But it is a matter of solidarity. It is a matter of the majority. And as you've said, hearing the voice of our people. And so we go into another process now. It's not the one we wanted. It's not where we were hopeful we were headed, but it's the way it is. So thanks for your time. Thanks for the great work you do in Catholic education. And we'll look forward to seeing how the future unwinds over the coming weeks. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks very much, Kate. It's been great to talk to you.
That's it for this episode of Catholic Education Matters. Make sure to follow the show and share it with someone who's passionate about learning, leadership and community. You can also leave a review or connect with us online at Catholic Education Sandhurst. Until next time, stay with us as we explore what truly matters in education.